They were sleeping on carpet. They were sleeping on like hardwood floor. That's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, since I have enough of you guys in here, if you guys would please, I want to move the desks back to where they were in the groups. If you would please, do that for me. I'm putting the seating chart back up on the board in case you forgot where you sat. But if you could please move the desks back to where they were into the groups. Thank you. If you don't remember, there were two groups. There was one right here, one right here. There's another one there, there, and then there are two more in the back. There should be 8 groups. Yeah, I'm gonna have you help me with this. Alright. Can you move all of these papers to that table? We're gonna move this table. Moving everything back to the groups. For this class, yes, but I don't know if they're all part of the grade. I've got a couple people who saw the basic test, so if everyone's the basic test, they can okay. Alright. Oh, good job, guys.
Oh yeah, I totally know that dude. What is that?
No. Yeah. It won't be until next
Grace, don't
But if I get the last period graded today, which I should, then the grades at least will be on the grade book. Okay. I have one last request, but not of everybody. I only have a couple of people. Okay. Let's see here. All right. What? Yes, I know. I'm very excited about it. Can I get you guys to move your desks like all the way against the wall for just a minute, so I can move this other table through here? Just move all these like these 4 desks just as far that way. Thank you. Alright, now you guys can move your group back. Huh? No.
Oh yeah, it's whole room.
Mr. Benner, may I go get my water bottle from my locker?
Yeah.
Guys, it's whole room. Why are you so
Yes.
Like in the weekends, I wake up so early and I watch TV, but then the weekdays, I like can't wake up.
Good morning, Mavericks. Today is January 21st, 2014. Attention Newspaper Club. There is a newspaper meeting for all the newspaper club students this Thursday in Mrs. Swertley's room at 7:45. Please have a story idea. Attention students. Are you interested in being part of a speech club or competing against other schools for prizes? If so, the Murphy Speech Club is for you. Pick up an application with details from Mrs. Swertley's room or Mrs. Sanborn's room. Any interested student will be allowed to compete. Attention Student Council. Just a reminder, there is a meeting after school today in Mrs. Buckley's room, F101. Now we will have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Make it a great day, Mavericks.
I will kill you.
No, hold on.
Hey, Jay, you know about
What?
the Agora is? I know what Agora is. It's the chillest thing I've ever seen.
Have you guys ever seen a slow Wait, what? What did you do?
Say you're really cute. I just heard this video and I started laughing.
To you?
No, not to me.
To who?
Oh my god, no, I'm not playing.
What did she say to? To guns?
Yeah, I totally like him. What the heck? I hated that. I want to punch him. I feel bad, but it's not true.
I should have beat her. I want to go back to the picture.
Not see the picture.
I got way much better. I just did dance. I just did contact. It was really
You can't have contact.
Oh. Pool table, yeah. Pool table, and I just got off of that bear. And pool ball. Awesome. See the stairs. Oh my bad.
Probably tomorrow. I have one or two people to show you. So once everybody takes it. Calm down back there, Michael.
Yeah, actually, what? I want to sleep at 9. I want to sleep at 9. Last night I was sleeping at 9:30. Whoa, dear no. Whoa. I didn't even fall asleep. Like, since I was little, I really enjoyed it. It's so nice. It's so nice. It's really nice. Yeah, I know. You wouldn't be tired. I would do makeup crap. Yeah, why didn't you Yeah, eyelashes are black. I don't wear
Eyeshadow.
Wait, guys,
Eyeshadow.
way too low.
Black glittery eyeshadow.
Not black. Why did you read it? It's brown. Oh my god! I know my makeup palette. No way. All these guys are telling me what I wear on makeup. No. Oh, thank you. Whoever said that? Was that you?
Alright, let me see. Go get Oh yeah. Oh wow. It's like a silver.
Wow, everyone just come and look at my face. Everyone.
Alright.
It's a museum. It's a museum. I put gold and then I put brown on my eyebrow.
I thought it looked silver.
You said it was black.
It's eyeshadow. I want to find
We're the best team in the USA.
Because we did a tournament,
But
but
that's not
Seriously, like, is it Alright, now we go. I'll play you tomorrow. Yeah, let's do it tomorrow during homeroom. That way I can put it on the
maybe
Nobody goes to my YouTube anyways. Except for you guys.
Oh, yeah. Nobody does it anyway. I'm sorry.
I always mess up that.
Yes.
You do it. You were trying to figure We're the best team in the
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get to your regular seats. The bell will ring. Ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Okay. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know a couple of things before we get started today. Number one, in case you forgot, We are starting a new section today. We're going to start talking about ancient Greece today. And we're talking about ancient Greece for just a little while. It is one of the longer chapters. Ancient Greece, ancient Rome are one of the longer chapters, so we'll be talking about that for a little bit. We're going to do a little bit of a mixture with this. We're still going to be doing some of our regular standard study guides, but we're also going to be doing more smartboard activities with this because there's just a lot more stuff out there about ancient Greece than some of the other stuff that we've talked about so far. So we'll be doing a little bit, things go a little bit different today. So if you've been really, really bored of just sitting and reading and doing study guides, we'll be doing some different things today. So that'll be, kind of starting today and a little bit tomorrow. Alright, but we're, the other thing that I want to let you know is I have, I think, almost all of the tests graded for this class. I can tell you, I can't pass them back to you just yet because I do have a couple people throughout my other classes who are still taking it today, and I don't like to pass back tests until everybody's taken it. You'll probably get them back tomorrow. If I remember correctly, from when I was putting them into the computer, out of the entire class, there was 38 possible points on the test. The average class score was a 34 out of 38, which is really, really good. No, the 2 extra credits don't make it 40. Like, it makes it otherwise they wouldn't be extra credit points.
Oh, yeah.
38 points. There were 38 points on the test. I believe the average classroom score is was a 34, which I believe makes a classroom average like an 89, an 88 or an 89. So that's really good. That's really good. It's average should be 75. You guys scored well above average. So that's really good. So congratulations on that. Like I said, you'll probably get those back tomorrow. If at all, while we're working through ancient Greece, if you are at all interested in some of the stuff that we talked about, I have a number of books on ancient Greece and ancient Rome that we'll be talking about in a little bit that you'll see coming up. So you can check that out. All right, but before we get started on that, I do have one thing for you guys to do. Alright, never mind. Actually, you know what, we'll do it this way. Everybody take out a piece of paper. No! Everybody take out a piece of paper. Very simple. In fact, you can actually, if you wanted to, you can just use a half sheet and share a sheet with a friend. If you wanted to, but you don't have to. It's fine. We already got it up. 5 very simple true-false questions. I'm going to read them to you. You write true-false down on your page. True or false. Number 1, write true and false. You don't have to write the entire sentence out. Just true and false.
You want to write our names on this?
Yes, your names would be helpful. Are we ready?
How many questions are there?
5. 5 questions. Just true and false. Write your name on the page. And then just write the answers, true or false. I'm going to test your knowledge of ancient Greece. We'll see how much you already know. Ready? Number 1. Quietly. Question number 1. The civilization of ancient Greece was at its peak nearly 1,000 years ago. I'll read it again. True or false? The civilization of ancient Greece was at its peak nearly 1,000 years ago. You don't have to write out the question, just true or false. Ready for question number 2? Question number 2. The ancient Greeks had no written language, but still produced a very successful civilization. Question number 2. The ancient Greeks had no written language, but still produced a very successful civilization. Alright, question number 3. For most of its history, ancient Greece was not a politically unified country. True or false? For most of its history, ancient Greece was not a politically unified country. Question number 4. Olives and sheep were important sources of food in ancient Greece. You want to read that again, or you guys got that one? Good. All right, question number 5. The ancient Greeks believed that one all-powerful God created human beings, ruled over their lives, and decided when they would die. All right. Did anybody need to hear that last one again?
No.
All right. I'm going to have you guys go ahead and hold on to this for right now. No. Alright, let's see here. I need to quickly take attendance for Andrew here. Is Ian here?
No. Ian.
I thought I saw him this morning. Alright. Okay. So, what we're going to do now, we're going to watch a short video on ancient Greece that will answer all of these questions for you. And then I have some work for you to do based on what you learned in the video. Huh? No, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Hold on a second. We're in the same audio.
2,500 years ago, a remarkable civilization was thriving here in Greece. Greece is known as the birthplace of Western civilization because its people created the world's first democratic government, the first Olympic Games, and made important contributions to architecture, art, literature, science, and mathematics. And their mysterious religion has enriched countless generations with its many wonderful myths and legends. So now, let us go back in time and find out what it was like to live during this amazing period of history. The civilization of ancient Greece developed here in the northeastern region of the Mediterranean Sea, in an area known for its beauty, where the mountains touch the sea. It is a place where olive trees spring from fields of wildflowers, and where shepherds still tend their flocks on the rocky hillsides of hundreds of remote islands. Because of the rugged geography of this ancient land, long ago, people from different parts of Greece were isolated from one another. And that is why they were rarely united under a single government. Instead, their civilization developed in many independent city-states that were scattered across a large area. Basically, a Greek city-state was nothing more than a tiny country made up of a single city and the lands and villages that surrounded it. Each city-state was unique. Each had its own system of government, its own laws, and its own military. But because the citizens of all the different city-states spoke the Greek language, had similar customs, employed similar styles of building and art, and worshipped the same gods and goddesses, historians have combined them into a single great civilization, known as the civilization of ancient Greece. The lives of the ancient Greeks were strongly influenced by their religion, and by understanding their beliefs, we can learn quite a lot about the world in which they lived. The Greek religion was very well organized, and yet it wasn't based on sacred books of teachings, such as the Bible or the Quran. Instead, it slowly grew and developed over thousands of years. Religion was taught mainly through folk tales, called myths, that were passed down from one generation to the next. Greek myths told of the magical powers and adventures of the gods. The Greeks worshipped the nature spirits of rivers, springs, trees, and caves. But most important to them were the gods and goddesses that came from the snow-covered peaks of Mount Olympus. The ancient Greeks thought that the Olympian gods were a family of huge, all-powerful beings who could change their shapes by magic. The Greek gods were believed to be immortal. That is, they could live forever. Each god had a different role. Some governed various regions of the world, while others controlled the many different things that affected human life. For example, here we see a statue of the god Poseidon. He ruled the seas and all the creatures in them. Poseidon's brother Zeus was the king of the gods and ruled the sky and stormy weather. Zeus was also the father of many of the most important gods and goddesses. His children included Apollo, the god of the sun, Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, and Athena, the goddess of wisdom, to name just a few. The Greek gods were thought to be a lot like human beings, because myths told of how they got angry and jealous, and even fought with one another. The way the ancient Greeks could obtain a god's advice was by asking questions of a strange woman called an oracle. Oracles used a special room hidden underneath temples like this one. By performing special ceremonies, oracles spoke in the god's voice, and could see into the future. The ancient Greeks believed it was very important to keep the gods happy so they wouldn't cause trouble in the world. And that was why temples were always the finest buildings in any Greek town. Greek temples weren't like churches, mosques, or synagogues because ordinary people weren't allowed inside to worship. Instead, a temple was built to be a home for a god's spirit. Several temples stood on the rocky hill of the Acropolis, or High City, that overlooked the streets of Athens. And of these temples, this one, called the Parthenon, was completed around the year 432 BC. The temple was constructed of pure white marble for the goddess Athena, the protector of their city-state. Inside the Parthenon, a famous sculptor had constructed an enormous statue of the goddess from wood, gold, and ivory. In Athens, the main festival of the summer, the Panathenaea, honored Athena's birthday. The festival began with a joyous procession in which gifts and sacrificial animals were brought to her temple. As people paraded through the streets, they sang hymns and played musical instruments. After reaching the temple, a splendid ceremony was held in which Athena's birthday gift from the Athenians, a newly woven gown, was placed on her statue. Outside the temple, the animals were sacrificed and some of their meat was burned on a sacred fire. After the ceremonies ended, the people of Athens enjoyed a typical Greek feast of meat, olives, grapes, cheese, figs, bread, and wine. Athens was probably the best of all the Greek city-states. It was famous not only because of its many fine buildings, but also because it was where the world's first democracy was established. In fact, democracy is a Greek word that means government by the people. Although the Athenian democracy allowed enslavement of people captured in wars and did not allow women to vote, it still proved to be very successful. Under it, Athens thrived, and with the help of some of the greatest statesmen, artists, and scholars in history, the city grew in wealth, beauty, and power. Religious festivals, such as the one honoring Athena, were very important to the ancient Greeks. Most religious festivals included contests in which athletes competed with one another in front of huge crowds. The largest and most famous of these contests, the Olympic Games, are still held today. The first Olympic Games took place here in ancient Olympia in the year 776 BC. Olympia was a sanctuary or sacred town built for Zeus, and originally the Olympic Games were held in his honor. To this day, the Olympic torch is still lit in Olympia and then is carried by runners to wherever the games are being held. Long ago, Zeus's magnificent temple stood proudly in the center of Olympia. Near it were a row of buildings called treasuries, where valuable religious offerings were stored. Also nearby was a smaller temple, the Temple of Hera, Zeus's goddess wife, whom the ancient Greeks called the Mother of the Gods. Just outside the walls of the temple enclosure stood the stadium and the athletic buildings where the contestants trained. Like Athena's temple in Athens, Zeus's temple at Olympia held a gold and ivory statue of the god that stood over 44 feet, or nearly 14 meters high. Zeus's temple was ringed with altars like this one, and on some of them sacrificial fires burned 24 hours a day. Sprinkled among the altars were the statues of the winners of past Olympic Games, and all around them grew the wild olive trees that were sacred to Zeus. Today, the temple of the king of the gods lies in ruins, and his statue has long since disappeared, but the stones of its huge pillars still lie where they crashed to the earth over 1,500 years ago following a powerful earthquake. The Olympic Games were held every 4 years at midsummer. They lasted for a whole month, and during this time, warfare among the city-states stopped as a sign of respect for Zeus. Tens of thousands of men came from all parts of Greece, either to watch or to participate in the games. Women, however, were not allowed to attend. During the first day of the Olympic Games, religious ceremonies were held. There was a grand procession, and offerings and sacrifices were made to Zeus. The next day, here in the stadium, the events began. There were foot races, wrestling contests, and boxing matches, to name just a few. Besides these events, horse races and chariot races were held in the Olympic racecourse next to the stadium. For prizes, instead of the bronze, silver, and gold medals of today, the winners of the ancient Olympic Games were crowned with wreaths made from the branches of Zeus's sacred olive trees. In Greece, this simple ceremony was considered the greatest honor a man could ever receive. Athletic competitions were an important part of life in ancient Greece, but watching plays was probably an even more popular activity. Plays were held in open-air theaters like this one, which were found in nearly all Greek towns. In the center of each theater stood a small round altar to the god Dionysus, because theaters were actually his temples. In fact, the best seats were always reserved for his priests. Dionysus was the god of wine and pleasure, and in ancient Greece, wild religious festivals were often held in his honor. Attending plays was thought to please Dionysus, mainly because it was an enjoyable thing to do. The ancient Greeks loved to watch day-long plays that were performed in the circular area at the foot of the grandstands they called the orchestra. The Greeks were very famous for their plays, which were based on legends and myths. Greek plays were very different from those of today, because the actors, in ancient times, were always men who wore masks like this one, that had strange, exaggerated expressions. It is quite interesting that just a short walk from the huge theater seen here, there once stood the greatest center for healing in all of ancient Greece. Long ago, sick people came from far and wide, hoping to be cured here at the sanctuary of Asclepius. Asclepius was the god of medicine and the son of Apollo, the sun god. Myths told of how the god had learned healing from a very wise being belonging to a race of creatures called centaurs that were half man and half horse. The temple of Asclepius was guarded by thousands of snakes, the god's sacred animal. It was outside this temple that those seeking to be cured sacrificed animals and burned offerings to the god of medicine. After making their offerings, the sick people followed a path through the woods to a hospital building where they spent the night sleeping on the skin of the animal they had just sacrificed. While they slept, they were lucky. The god of medicine appeared to them in their dreams. In the morning, the patients would tell a temple priest what they had seen in their dreams, and the priest would prescribe a treatment to cure them. In ancient Greece, some of the most common treatments for sick people were having them take special baths, do physical exercises, or even having them perform mental exercises, such as studying certain books or writing poetry. The medical treatments used by the ancient Greeks must have actually done some good, because their civilization prospered for quite a long time until the Romans started to conquer them around 220 BC. But the Romans truly admired the Greeks and ended up absorbing many Greek ways into their own civilization. And so it was the Romans who spread Greek ideas, styles of art, and religious beliefs to the countries of Western Europe. And that is why ancient Greece has come to be known as the birthplace of Western civilization. When European explorers began to cross the great oceans, they brought Greek ideas with them to the New World. It is very easy to see the influence ancient Greece has had on us by looking at the styles of many of the buildings found in almost any town in America. Two of the best examples of the Greek style of architecture are found in Washington, D.C., in the fine buildings of the United States Supreme Court and the U.S. Capitol. And it is interesting to think that inside of these famous buildings that were built to resemble Greek temples, the democratic principles of government that began thousands of years ago in ancient Greece are still being followed today. True or false? Zeus was the god of the sea.
That's a hard one.
Okay. Alright. Alright, you get up here. Alright. Okay, let's look back at your first quiz that you took. And we'll see how you guys did. Based on what you guys learned now. Alright, let's see here. Question number 1. Question number 1 was, the civilization of ancient Greece was at its peak nearly 1,000 years ago. Was that true or false?
False.
False, correct. So over 2,000 years ago. Number 2, the ancient Greeks had no written language, but still produced a very successful civilization. False. That is correct. They had a written language. Question, no, that was not called Latin. Latin was of the Romans, not of the Greeks. It's called Greek. Number 3, for most of its history, ancient Greece was not a politically unified country. Is that true or false? It is true. True. Ancient Greece was made up of large city-states. They were independent governments. They shared a similar language, similar customs, similar beliefs, but they were completely independent units. Number 4, olives and sheep were important sources of food in ancient Greece. True. And number 5, the ancient Greeks believed in one all-powerful God created human beings, ruled over their lives, and decided when they would die. False. False. Okay, I have something for you guys to work on. The video quiz is on here. I want you to take the video quiz. Then there is a section of vocabulary. You will need to read through the vocabulary for the back. The back has a crossword puzzle for you guys to do using the vocabulary.
Is this homework?
Yes. If you did not finish it, you still have about 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes to work on it. Please make sure you put your name on it. You will be turning it in tomorrow. Sean, please stop napping and going.
It's false.
What? But
And
you,
it says Uranus is a planet named after its
Oh.
but it's the Roman name, not the Greek name. All the planets are named after the Roman name.
I knew that. It's called Uranus.
You know, Jupiter is supposed to be
Neptune is Pluto, or Neptune is
Yeah.
Jupiter is Zeus. Alright, you guys, you have work to do? Please take the video quiz, ladies and gentlemen. Please take the video quiz. After you have finished the video quiz, look over the vocabulary you'll need to finish the crossword puzzle on the back. Socrates. Socrates. It should go down. Should you the festival? It's actually because you're thinking about the festival. It's actually not. Yeah. No problem.
I forget where I see it.